This is The Great Expanse by John Bapp 426, and this is the recap with no cap Daredevil Born Again Season 2, Episode 3. And it's called The Scales and the Sword. Yes, I did have to pause the video so I could look up the name of the episode. Shame on me. But again, this is the recap with no cap. And again, it's not usually a linear progression when I talk about these Daredevil episodes. It's usually just whatever floats down the river. I just go in whatever direction the wind carries me. So this one, I was told beforehand that this was one of the more critically acclaimed episodes. I believe somebody said that something actually happens in this episode. Now, I don't really go off of other people's opinions. I gotta watch it for myself. And I have to say, this thus far, this third episode, has been the most poorly paced episode of this season. Number 3 is the worst paced episode. I'll tell you why, okay? And I always like to elaborate, on why I have bad takes or why I have good takes. There are too many scenes in this particular episode with characters interacting that I don't care about. Okay, having said that, I understand the progression of these characters' stories from the first season, which you're supposed to do. That's how you continue on a narrative. I just didn't care about them last season, and I definitely don't care about them this season. We see James Gandolfini's son, Michael Gandolfini, who plays the deputy mayor Daniel somebody, okay? He's in this broom closet of office, okay? And he has a conversation with Buck Cashman, great comic book name, Buck Cashman, okay? Buck and Cash in the same name. About an eclair or some kind of food. I'm like, I don't want to hear everyday talk between two characters that I don't care about. The audience don't care about these guys. They're just more evidence of the ballooning of this cast, Daredevil Born Again, for Disney. The cast is so freaking big that you almost forget about Charlie Cox sometimes. But yet, Wilson Fisk, Vincent D'Onofrio is just thrown in front of your face. Yeah. So much so that the Kingpin does not have any novelty anymore. I mean, do they even call, I'm trying to think if they even call him Kingpin. Like, it's Mayor Fisk, Fisk this, Fisk. But where's the Kingpin? Where's the Kingpin of crime? The man that runs all organized crime in the city of New York, traditionally in the comic books. And he should be doing that now. And you could say, yes, he does have the free port open, so he can just ship all kind of guns, all kind of contraband through the city without them having to pay any sort of a import or whatever. And I don't think customs inspects these things either. I think that's a caveat. Now, that plays a part in this episode because the charter for the free port is sent to the governor. I don't remember what the governor's name is. It's a lady. And she basically calls the Kingpin out on this, or Mayor Fisk out on this. This is one of the good character interactions. The Kingpin, one of the main characters, now has pushback against a new character with more authority than him. This is good character interaction. Going back to Buck Cashman and Deputy Mayor Daniel, who don't have any kind of a meaning to the story, bad interaction. And guess what? But this scene lasted way too long. Only for, at the end of the conversation, for Buck Cashman to say, find the leak, because it's coming from inside this building. And Daniel's like, I will. That scene wasn't even necessary, because we know that Kingpin was leaning on Daniel to find the leak in City Hall. So why would you reinforce with Buck Cashman when the supreme antagonist, Wilson Fisk, already leaned on Daniel to find the leak? And again, the pointless try this food is good. I don't care about them. That has nothing to do with their story. And guess what? Buck Cashman gets 2 of these scenes. 2. And the second one is even worse than the first. He's talking to the psychiatrist, Dr. Glenn, ex-girlfriend of Daredevil, at, I think it's the dinner, some kind of dinner for ladies, something like that. And so they're sitting at this table, which gives them a direct line of sight to Wilson Fisk, Vanessa, and these other people at their table. This goes on for so long, and it's so uninteresting and unimportant. We know you guys are on the periphery. You're not on his inner circle, even though Buck Cashman kind of is. I'm just sitting there like, it's like nails on the chalkboard. I'm like, would you get this off? This was totally unnecessary. And it dragged on for so long. They're like, oh, here, there's deputy. They're gossiping. Buck Cashman, the hitman, sort of a bodyguard, or I guess henchman, for Kingpin, is gossiping about his seat inside of the ball. The psychiatrist, gossiping. Do I want to watch that in a superhero show? They are trying so hard to make Daredevil, Born Again, Law and Order. This ain't Law and Order. This is not what made Daredevil one of the best superhero shows on television, even though it was Netflix. There's such a disconnect between Netflix Daredevil and Born Again Daredevil. Why? Because the cast is just so ballooned. It's so large. They're gonna have to do the whole Walking Dead thing. Like Walking Dead, they went through this thing where there were too many cast members, and 4 cast members would die per season because they knew it was too many people. They're gonna have to do that for this show. They must. Okay, the swordsman, Duquesne, nobody even knew who he was. He was not that important. Now, his trial, it is a plot, one of the subplots of this season based on last season, because originally Duquesne was supposed to be an investor in the port project. Okay, I only know that because I watched this episode. I didn't really remember because I didn't care about him. I just remember Fisk had all these people that were supposed to be the investors, and when they said they're not going to participate, he locked them up in these Vietnamese POW military camps. I always think about the Vietnamese POW camps, the bamboo, the small cages that you can barely stand up in. It's usually in water, yay! That's what came to mind. So I'm like, all right. So Duquesne was interviewed in episode 1 by Daredevil's ex-girlfriend. She erased his answers and made it so he seemed like a threat for his trial. Now, at the beginning of this episode, this was actually a good scene between 2 characters that I don't really care about, but the scene actually made me sort of admire Councilman McDuffie a little more, okay? The one that's a partner with Daredevil in the law firm. So Dr. Glenn and McDuffie meet in front of the courthouse, and they actually have a meaningful conversation. Dr. Glenn talks about how she was traumatized by Muse, so she was a direct recipient of vigilante violence. Counselor McDuffie is she said a great line. She said, I understand what you went through, or whatever. She said, I know I didn't go through it, but she said, Fisk is not the answer. That was a great line, and I felt that scene. I thought that was a good interaction, and it helped push the story forward. Deputy Mayor Daniel and Buck Cashman did not push the story forward. Buck Cashman and Dr. Glenn later on at the ball, gossiping, did not push the story forward. You're forcing me to look at the everyday activities of characters that I don't care about that much. And what was Daredevil doing? As Matt Murdock, Matt Murdock was doing next to nothing. We see Matt Murdock watching the trial on his tablet or his iPad. Then we see Daredevil taking a cat nap, taking a cat nap during the day, laying down I'm like, if you don't get up and be Daredevil, if you don't get up and train, if you don't go over legal briefs with Karen, who used to be his legal partner in Netflix series, act like you're an attorney. Be Matt Murdock and Daredevil, please. Let me see that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, doing Daredevil things as Matt Murdock, as only he can, because Matt Murdock is more meaningful to fighting crime because he can legally put away criminals that Daredevil beats up. That makes sense what I'm saying? So he can play both sides of the law. Daredevil beat the stuffing out of you. Matt Murdock can find a loophole legally to arrest you and to incarcerate you. I'm sorry if I'm growling a little bit. But the pacing of this episode, I'm like, I don't want to see Wilson Fisk having all these extemporaneous conversations with people. We know he's bad news. We know that the resistance is trying to bring them down or whatever. So anyway, Counselor McDuffie she tells Dr. Glenn earlier that I think the female judge Hochberg, pulled the trial up by 2 weeks. Obviously, this is the finagling of Wilson Fisk. It's probably with the help and the protection of the Contessa, who was played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus in Thunderbolts, and she was in Wakanda Forever too. So we see that he has backing from somebody that's high up in the government. Okay, so again, the odds are stacked against Counselor McDuffie. We see the pickle that she's in, so this builds her up as a character that you can sort of empathize with and sympathize with. We want to see the Kingpin brought down, okay? Even if this was this no-name swordsman Duquesne character. This is all a part of the grander scheme of bringing down Wilson Fisk and his empire. That's what this is, as the mayor. This city is basically under martial law. It is. So, Councilor McDuffie is granted access to Duquesne. So she's blindfolded by the AVTF and taken to this warehouse in Red Hook. She didn't know exactly where it was because she was blindfolded, as I said. So they do a lot of stuff that I appreciated. Since she couldn't see, she's taking in sounds, she's taking in textures, she's taking in smells. She interviews Duquesne, okay? Later on, Karen, because Duquesne loses the case. He's found guilty by the jury for being a vigilante, even though there's no evidence. So it was a fix. The fix was in. They provided no evidence that he was the swordsman, but he was found guilty. I mean, which you would expect, because Wilson Fisk is this overarching enemy, this menace that's affecting the entire legal landscape of New York City. So he's found guilty, predictably. I liked what Duquesne was saying afterwards. I don't know if he was quoting Shakespeare or something, but like every time they would cut to him, he would say a line like, okay, injustice is reigning. He didn't say exactly that, but I like that, okay? So I said, if Daredevil is really a hero, I said this while I was watching it, he must rescue Duquesne. He must, because he knows that the trial is fixed. If he's a hero, all right? So McDuffie goes out and gets hammered at the bar. Karen walks past her wearing a wig because she's wanted by the ABTF in the city. So then McDuffie follows her. No. Karen says, meet me in your office, I think, or something like that. She goes in the office, Daredevil's there. All right? Now, I think McDuffie and Daredevil they had some sort of face-to-face encounter in the first season. I don't remember the first season because I made sure I didn't remember. I didn't like it. So Daredevil says, where is Duquesne being held? So she says, I can't really tell you anything. So he says, that's perfect. You know what I mean? So then we cut to a montage of McDuffie telling Daredevil the details of everything she heard and smelled and felt. And you see Daredevil experiencing it. It's almost like how they do Wolverine in the comics. Like he'll just go by his sense of smell and he'll piece together what happened based on the different smells. Does that make sense? So with Daredevil's heightened senses, she heard pigeons when she was brought in, which was an indicator that they were by the water. I thought they were seagulls. You can hear seagulls too. Because even while I was watching it like live, I'm like, she can't see, but she should be able to smell the water, hear all these sounds, and hear the seagulls. But they were pigeons, not seagulls. So when Daredevil enters, he hears pigeons. So he's like, okay, I'm going the right way. She said she heard water dropping. Now, of course, Daredevil can hear a drop of water from like a mile away or something ridiculous like that because of his heightened senses. So he's following the clues that she left, Councilor McDuffie left, tactfully or tactically. I think it's tactfully. You know, whatever she smelled, heard, or felt. So I like the way he did this. I'm trying to remember. Okay, so basically Daredevil's going in to rescue Duquesne, like I said he should. So there are all these other people that were arrested by, I almost said ICE, by the AVTF, because that's who his parallels, okay? So Daredevil frees them, even though he had a mission to do something else, or whatever, because I believe he left a watch in the very first episode on the Northern Star so he could track it later. Some dude had a watch on after he beat him up. He took the watch off the guy and put it into the contraband that had all the weapons in it, okay? So Daredevil's doing this Daredevil thing, fighting people off. Karen is there on the docks to lend support. Duquesne, when he's freed, he shows a bit of his swordsman's skills, which is a good sequence. It's a good action sequence. For some godforsaken reason, White Tiger's niece shows up. I'm like, how did she know to go to that warehouse? White Tiger's niece. Nobody discussed this with her. Like, you're telling me when she watched the dark web video that BB York put out, and they showed the warehouse, but just from watching that on the dark web, she knew to be there at this time while all this stuff was going on? Garbage. Plot armor. The script said you should be there, so she was there. Useless. She should not even been in this episode. Okay? So, all the people that were wrongfully imprisoned by the ABTF, as well as the swordsman, they get into the back of this like armored Humvee. They make their escape. So, Wilson Fisk, he hears about this, and he says, all right, it's time to, I think he said, enact the protocols or something. So being a mobster that the Kingpin is, being a gangster, being evil, being a supervillain, he blows up the Northern Star and all of his cargo and all the crew aboard. So while Daredevil thinks he has this victory of freeing all these people, including the swordsman, from this warehouse, the Kingpin still has a major laugh. I'm not saying, I guess you can say he sort of had the last laugh because he blew up all the evidence of the Northern Star, which is basically the main plot line of this second season. It is. So we see this Kingpin tying up loose ends, which is something the Kingpin would do. We see Daredevil doing Daredevil things and staging a rescue attempt of Duquesne. And even Karen was like, don't commit suicide, don't do this, because he's going to be doing it by himself. Because I was thinking, okay, even if everyone in the city recognized the warehouse, nobody would have the balls to take on the ABTF. Only Daredevil, and only the Punisher, but we haven't seen Frank Castle yet. So it made sense. It gave Daredevil something Daredevil to do, gave the Kingpin something Kingpin to do. But again, I have to go back to the ballooning of this cast. Too many cast members, too many people. White Tiger's niece, unnecessary for this episode. Deputy Mayor Gandolfini, unnecessary. Buck Cashman, unnecessary. They tried to make Dr. Glenn mean something, even though she had a good interaction with Counselor McDuffie. Meaningless. So many. I don't think Cherry was in it because he's ultra meaningless as well. But the cast is too big. Shave this thing down, please. Please. Do you remember in the Netflix series, the very first season of Daredevil, the Kingpin didn't show up till like halfway through the first season, I believe. Or was it the end? I don't remember. And the only face of the Kingpin was this guy with glasses who was a close ally, I guess. I don't remember what his name was, of the Kingpin. But he's almost his like major domo throughout the city, okay? Because there was this consortium. It was like an old Japanese lady. There was the owl who was played by, I almost said Bob Dole. Bob Gumpton. He's an older actor from the 80s and stuff. So you sort of thought that they were sort of the masterminds of this, but ultimately it was the Kingpin. But the Kingpin had so much mystique, so much aura, that the first time you see him, you just see this huge, wide-shouldered, bald man looking at a painting, and there's aura on him because we haven't been fed everything the Kingpin was doing. So his introduction was masterful. But the only person that could be related back to the Kingpin was the guy with the glasses that I mentioned. Only him. There wasn't a whole deputy mayor. There wasn't a whole Sheila and all these other people. It was only the Kingpin and the guy with the glasses. And when Karen, spoiler, when Karen killed the guy with the glasses, it meant something. It actually meant something. It meant something to the Kingpin as well. You felt this as an audience member. You're like, oh my God. You're like, that's the Kingpin's guy. Nowadays, if you kill Buck Cashman, who's going to care? If Deputy Mayor Gandolfini gets like outed and arrested, who cares? You're going to be like, good. You're not going to feel any sort of tie to the Kingpin, any sort of emotional tie. You might feel that with Vanessa, but these other people, Sheila, even though I like Sheila, ain't nobody gonna care. All these people associated with Daredevil. Do you really think the death of Cherry would have engaged the audience to have an emotional touchstone with the show? Nobody cares about Cherry. They don't care. Like, BB York, another one. No, of course we don't, in our society, of course we don't want to see young ladies taken advantage of or assaulted in any way, shape, or form. But if she said that I got a job as a reporter and I had to go to Bangladesh, do you think we would miss her? The girl that does the BB report. Would the show miss her? No. White Tiger's niece. If all of a sudden she said, I saw somebody appear through a sling ring and they took me to Camertage or whatever, and I won't be in the show for the rest of the season, do you think the show would fall off? No, the show will go, yay, don't let the door hit you on the way out of the sling ring. There are so many characters that should be gone. Again, this story with Counselor McDuffie, I really feel like this is her opportunity to shine, and I'm starting to be engaged in her because there's smart writing for Counselor McDuffie. So I don't really see her as useless anymore because we're getting good writing and good story. But we got to cut this cast down. This cast is just too big. Got to cut it in half or something. But anyway, those are just my thoughts for episode 3 of Daredevil Born Again season 2, titled The Scales and the Sword. Okay, which I'm sure which indicates justice, scales, the sword representing probably the swordsman, perhaps. All right. But what did you think of this episode? What did you think of my editorial about the ballooning of the cast with the way that the pacing of this episode, which is god awful to me? Do you think there are too many characters? Do you think there are too few characters and more characters should be introduced? I don't know, because guess what? Concerning the episode, Kingpin still got to deal with the governor because she has the power to undo the charter of the Freeport. So she can impose, because she's a part of the legislative body of the state of New York. She's the governor. It says in the charter, only the governor can take away this status for the Freeport. So she's an antagonist, possibly, of the Kingpin. And you see them sort of try to one-up each other by trying to, toast each other at that ball. And the governor sort of beat Kingpin to it, just to try to save face or whatever. But so the governor is a new thorn in the Kingpin side. Will he turn her, or will she go, Fisk, your status at the Freeport, done, out of here. The Freeport is closed. Will she do that? And while watching, I said, now this would be the perfect opportunity for the Kingpin to hire Marvel Comics muscle. In other words, somebody from the comic books, a new character from the comic books to be brought into this live action series. I said, this would be the perfect time to introduce a tarantula character, a Batroc character, to kill the governor. That's something the Kingpin would do. That's a possibility that could still happen. All right, but let me know your thoughts. Do you want to thumb up this episode, thumb down this episode? I'll say for this episode, I'm gonna give this C+ this episode. This is a good episode, but again, the pacing was awful. It was awful. But C+ for the episode. I like the way Daredevil did something. I like the way the Kingpin did something. I like the introduction of the governor. I like the conversations between Dr. Glenn and Counselor McDuffie. I thought that was very well done. I think this was Counselor McDuffie's episode. She really shined in this episode. Okay, so C+ for this episode. And this is The Great Expanse by John Bat 426. The recap with no cap. I give it to you honestly. I'm not trolling. I'm not trying to gaslight you or fuel a fire just for an outrage or just to troll you guys. That's really how I think. That's really how I feel. So you do the same. Let me know how you honestly feel about this episode in the comment section, which is where? Right down there. All right. I'll see you guys next time.